Good afternoon, everyone. We're right at 3 o'clock. I'm sure we may have a few more people join us, but I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Cheryl Susevich, and I am a Director of Development at Georgia Southern University, working primarily with the College of Science and Mathematics there. Daniel Cassavant is on here from Georgia Gwinnett College, and he's going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions along the way, feel free to open your mic and ask, or put it in the chat, and he'll be keeping an eye out from that. Otherwise, I'll probably just go straight through and take any questions you may have at the end. Let me go ahead and try to share my screen. I've not worked with Teams before, so hopefully this will work. Here we go. So I'm assuming you all can see that.
Yep.
Great, thank you, Daniel. So a little bit about myself. I've been working in some area of advancement for 27 years now. I started off at my own alma mater at Wesleyan College in Macon, and then spent 16 years at Kennesaw State University. I was sharing with Daniel before that when I got there, we had 11,000 students, and when I left, there were 25,000, and I just saw the latest census puts Kennesaw State as the second largest public institution in Georgia, and I think there was north of 40,000. I can't remember what the number is. So grew up in that environment where resources were always lagging because we were always growing. In 2012, I went down to Armstrong in Savannah as the director of alumni. When I left Kennesaw State, I was really holding two positions. I was the director of public relations and the director of development for the College of the Arts there. So I've done a little bit of everything. Just last year in December, I shifted over from the alumni office to the development office at Georgia Southern, which of course had been consolidated with Armstrong a couple of years ago. So I've done major gifts, I've done annual gifts, I've done alumni relations, I've done, running a magazine. Almost anything you can think of is in my resume. But over the course of my new position, like I said, I came on board in December, and then I was really working through the portfolio that had been assigned to me, trying to decide, what I was going to keep and what I was going to put aside for a while and what was going to come out. And had just gotten to the point where I was really starting to make some visits when the pandemic hit. And so one of the advantages of that was it gave me time to sit back and really reflect on how I wanted to approach my portfolio. And so this is the result of that. And in fact, when I created this presentation, it was for a lunch and learn that we do monthly with my colleagues. And after I presented, they said, oh, you should share this somewhere else. So I sent it off to GIAC, and the next day they sent out the announcement of who all the presenters were. So I guess I got in right in time. So I hope this will be beneficial for you. If you've been working in major gifts, you're probably familiar with a lot of these things. And I will say, all of us have our own approach. Even within my own office, all of the gift officers do this in their own way. So this is one example of how you can manage your portfolio. So let's get started. First of all, I do want to acknowledge that probably like many of you, I spend a lot of time in professional development this year. Thankfully, a lot of the vendors in our field, as well as professional colleagues, provided a lot of free webinars. And so in addition to previous training, added a lot of training over the course of March and April and May and June. So I want to acknowledge that all of this stuff, I may remember where some of it came from because it's so recent, but some of it I picked up a while ago. But, Academic Impressions, Alexander Haas, Blackbaud University, which is Blackbaud is the vendor that we use with Razor's Edge, excuse me, NXT, CASE, of course, and I had just gone to the District 3 conference in February and had just gotten back from that. It felt like when the pandemic started, because I stayed a few days later to go to the parks. And then, of course, Donor Relations Guru. If you are not familiar with Lynn Wester, highly recommend her. And lots of stuff through Veritas. I've been becoming a little bit of a disciple of theirs over the course of this pandemic. So very soon after I switched over to the development office at Georgia Southern, one of my colleagues, we were having a department lunch. Remember when we used to do those things? And one of the colleagues who works in one of the support areas was sitting with 3 gift officers and said, I couldn't do what you do. And I said, well, what is that? What is it you think we do? And the person said, beg people for money. I said, well, that's not what I do. And I found this, I love memes. I'm like the queen of memes. And so I altered this one from, what is it, Oliver Twist. Please, sir, may I have a spectrophotometer? Remember, I work with scientists, so that was the most recent thing we had gotten was a spectrophotometer. But that's not at all what we do. And I found this from Lynn Wester. You all will probably remember when these kinds of grids were super popular a couple of years ago. And I just love them. And Lynn, the donor relations guru, had this one on her blog. I don't know if she created it or if she found it, but I always enjoy them. And when you go through, what is it that people think we do and what is it that we actually do? My colleague was really talking about this one on the top side there, what society thinks I do. And you see the person picking the guy's pocket. And then if you're not reporting directly to another fundraising officer, if you're reporting directly to a dean or an academic officer or someone else, what your boss thinks you do is going out and picking money off of trees. And you think maybe you're meeting really important people and hobnobbing it. But I really like the last picture here. What is it I really do? Because here you see a donor. I'm assuming that the woman is the donor and the man is the gift officer, that she's celebrating and he's celebrating with her. And that's really what we do. And she looks like a lot of the donors that I had at Kennesaw State. We are really bringing together people who want to do and invest in our vision. And we are helping to find ways to connect them to that. So in a lot of ways, we're like matchmakers. And so in this picture where they're very clearly celebrating, that's what I like to focus on. That's what our job is. I'm not taking money as a major gift officer from people who don't have money. I'm not taking money in some way that is nefarious. I'm really helping to advance their own mission, their own goals, and seeing where that aligns with our goals. So my mission, which I decided to write during the course of the pandemic, is to match people with resources and interest to the university's needs and goals in order to more fully realize the university's mission and vision, which we recently adopted, is people, purpose, action, growing ourselves to grow others. And here you see some of our recent graduates, the last time we had an in-person graduation, lined up across the river in Savannah with the City Hall behind them. And that's what I like to keep in mind. I am really devoted to the mission of serving our students. And at the end of the day, although, I can certainly go days and days without ever even seeing a student, at the end of the day, when I go to bed, I know that's what I'm working for. And that's what keeps me focused and keeps me driven. So for gift officers and everyone who really works in the development area, you're probably familiar with this gift cycle. Maybe you've seen this particular graphic or something similar to that outlining the steps, which is a cycle, right? Because once we get through with one gift, we're starting with another. We acknowledge it, then we are engaging again, and we're stewarding their gift. And then we're identifying what they might do next. For major gift officers, we're involved in some way in all of those steps. All of that is part of our job, but the main focus of our job is really about cultivation and solicitation. So it's really about developing the gift, developing the relationship, and finding ways to match and partner so that we get to the solicitation, we get to the ask, we get to that conversation about how they're going to impact the institution and the community and the students and whatever else it is that they're wanting to achieve with their giving, with their philanthropy. So, a few things I want to make sure we're at the same starting point. For me, my key assumptions when I'm doing my job is that I'm going to be donor-centered first. I'm going to be focused on what the donor's needs are and what the donor's drive is, what's motivating the donor and what is exciting them, what is inspiring them, encouraging them, as well as what's in their way, what's preventing them from being able to do what it is they want to do. With all of that in mind, I'm also still going to be university focused. And what that means is I cannot move a donor to give to something that they don't care about, but I also can't get a donor to give me a gift that doesn't focus on what the university is trying to achieve. So, for instance, we had a very big donor who had been generous over many, many years, who wanted to give a gift that was outside of the mission, was outside of the goals, outside of the 5-year plan, outside of anybody's idea within this particular department of what they wanted to do. And it was a large gift that was proposed, but it was never going to fit into the vision of the institution. And so we were very, very polite in declining this consistent offer because it went on for a number of years. But at the same time, we were able to continue to cultivate and maintain this relationship. So the donor was still making other gifts to the institution. So it's a real balance that you have to strike. But at the end of the day, you can't forsake the institution because of something that the donor wants to do. And I think that that can be a little bit confusing sometimes. If you say donor-centered, people within the institution, so for instance, the faculty you may be working with may think you work for the donor. Well, you don't at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, the beginning of the day, the middle of the day, you work for the institution. And so you want to be focused and understand, what is the university trying to accomplish? Where is the university going? And what is it going to take to get there? And then how do we plug into that the things that the donor wants to do? And sometimes the donor has an idea. For instance, I had one at Armstrong who came in, had read about food insecurity and how that was impacting campuses all over the country, and wanted to make a very large gift to support the students at Armstrong who might be having that same experience. And I thought, this is fantastic, just comes in and says, I'd like to make a gift. But what I didn't know, because I didn't work directly in that area with student affairs, I didn't know if it was something that we could manage. So here's a very large gift, but can we accept this gift? And so, as luck would have it, I called the vice president, and he said, actually, student government's been wanting to do that for a few years, and we don't have the resources for it. So it was a perfect match. So if the donor brings you something that they want to do and you don't know if you can do it, it's okay to say, let me check on this and see if we are able to do that, because gosh, that would be really great if we could. And a lot of times it's going to line up, even if you don't already know that that's something that they want to do. So stay focused on the mission. And you also need to be strategic. I am a very strategic person. If any of you have done StrengthsFinder, strategic thinking is my number one talent in that system. And so I'm always thinking how we can get to the goal, and what are the different paths we could take, and which one's going to take less time, and which one's going to cost less money, and which one's going to involve the right people. So strategy works very well with me. And one of the things that I picked up at the CASE conference in February was Arthur Chrysilis of Alexander Haas did a presentation. And in fact, it was so overfilled. It was 2 sessions long, and it was so overfilled that he repeated it again the next day. So and I know he's done it at other conferences too, if you've not yet had a chance to hear him, I really encourage you. CASE is going to be doing a virtual conference this February, all of the districts together. So if he's presenting there, I highly recommend you catch it. And I swear to you, he said it just this way because I wrote it down with quotation marks, and I'm not a really good note taker, but I put quotation marks around it. He said, if it ain't strategic and specific, then it ain't cultivation. And so you've got to think through, what is it you want to accomplish? And that may shift, as you talk to the donor and you listen to what it is that they're interested in. It may shift, but at the beginning, you need to have some idea. How much money do I think I might be able to ask this person for? When do I think I might be able to ask it? And what do I think they may be interested in funding? Because that's going to shape the conversation. But if they take a strong left turn, based on information, particularly you didn't have, if all of a sudden they start talking about how much they loved their mother playing piano as a child, you may be going for a totally different gift, again, as long as it's still something university can use. And then personalized. So that's what I think when he's talking about specific, he's talking about goals, but I also like to think that means about the donor too. Because again, if it's not something that excites the donor, if it's not something that inspires them, then they're not going to do it. And I'm not talking about corporate gifts here. I'm really talking about individuals. So how can I get this person interested, excited, inspired by what we do at the university so that they will be more motivated, not just to give, but to give their best gift. And that's always my goal. So how can I get them to that point to support what we're doing? So I really recommend using Google if you have access to that. We do use a Google mail system, and so we have access to Google as part of our professional experience. If not, I recommend that you look for a place where you can keep your files where they are accessible to you. This became really important during the pandemic, but for gift officers, I think it's important all the time because we're out on the road a lot. I sit in parking lots and type up my contact notes, or I speak them into a type thing and then go in and fix them later. But being able to access all of the files that I'm keeping on the donors is really important. And I like Google Drive because I can access it from my phone, my iPad, my computer, any computer. I've got a laptop, I've got a desktop at the office. So it's accessible. It's also shareable. So any particular documents or folders that I want to share with a colleague or with my boss, then I can just give them the access to do that. And it's also sortable and searchable. I am not a paper person. I rarely ever print anything out. I do not have a printer in my office. I'm always fussing at my husband for printing too much. I'm not really trying to save all the trees, although it would be nice if we could. I just am not a things person, and I don't like a lot of clutter. And I'm not really well organized with paper, so if I got paper, it just goes in a stack until the stack gets bigger, and then the stack goes in a drawer, and I never look at that stuff again. So I don't print it out. But here, if I keep things that I'm going to need later in the Google Drive, I can just go into the search, just like Google, right? And I can say, find FY21 strategy, and it'll pull up everything that has that in there, and I can find what I'm looking for without having to stick things into file folders and put them in a drawer. So I'm terrible at doing that. I used to think that I'd be great at that because I'm pretty organized, but not when it comes to keeping up with paper. So I like that I can sort through the stuff, I can search it, I can access it wherever I am, and I can share it with anyone on the team that I need to share it with. So here's the big thing. And when my boss asked me to do the lunch and learn that I presented this at originally, this is what she wanted me to share with my colleagues. Again, we're all organized in different ways, but this is the way that I set up. And I had time during the pandemic to really set it up, expand it as I worked with it, add to it, take away from it. But this is my sheet where I track all of my portfolio prospects, and my portfolio is around 130 prospects. But I also have my endowment donors there, anyone that I really want to make sure that I'm periodically and consistently keeping in touch with in some way. So also advisory board members for my dean, then honored alumni. So any of the alumni from my college who have received alumni awards or who have been recognized through the Alumni Association's 40 Under 40 program. I have them in there so that I can remember if I want to send them, a holiday greeting or a birthday card, just to sort of keep in touch with them and let them know that somebody at the university is thinking of them. But the most important thing here, of course, will be my portfolio prospects. So I like having it in the Google Sheet. Again, it's accessible to me wherever I am. Now, we use Razor's Edge NXT. I love it. It's highly recommended by me. Whatever constituent relationship management system you're using probably has the ability to do a lot of these things. If you don't have a good CRM, then you can organize it in this way using Google Sheets, using Excel or some other system like that. So I have this giant sheet with everyone in it going down the sheet, and then across the page I have all of these, I don't even know how many columns are in this sheet, but the first part of it is the identity and the priority and the plan. So I have where they fit in my strategy. So they're coded according to whether they're in my top 10 donors. Those are the ones that I want to get to within this this next year, I'm going to be asking them for some money probably. Then the next 25 in priority, and then the rest of the portfolio are all coded so that I can sort them together. And then of course their name and what my goal is for them. And I'm going to go into this actually more specifically later. So you'll see I've got personal details about them that I may need access to, a 26-step tracker for all the things that I want to do with them over the course of getting to and through and after the ask, their history and capacity with us, and then a 5-quarter monthly touch point so that I know planning ahead of time, their birthday's coming up in April, or there's an event that I want to make sure that they get to, or I want to make sure they're invited to coming up in February. And then any questions that I may have, as well as what I think their interests are. Did I leave the presentation? Can y'all still see it? Because I can't.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so I got to get to where I can see it. Hold on. Sorry. Like I said, never used Teams before. All right. So the first thing I do when a prospect is assigned to me is I'm going to look at their gift history. Hopefully they have one, but there are some people in my portfolio who don't have a gift history. And I'm going to check their ratings. So again, this is something that we have using Target Analytics. So your institution may have access to another rating system. Hopefully you have some research people who can help you with this. If not, then you're going to need to do some research yourself, maybe on trying to figure out what kind of assets and what kind of wealth your donors may have. For me, if you're familiar with Target Analytics, they give you all kinds of things you can look at. I've circled on here 3 of the things I look at mostly in trying to figure out for myself. Now, they tell me what they think my next gift ask should be, and they tell me what they think their wealth rating is. But I kind of like to look at it myself and figure out, what do I really think they're really capable of giving money? How much do I really think, if they loved us entirely and we were the most important thing to them, how much would that be? What would that look like? Realizing that number is going to probably not be realistic. It just gives me something to aim for, to know that maybe, just maybe, if I do my job perfectly, and I might get to that number. So it's very aspirational, the number that I set. But the way that I look at it for major gifts is I look at what Target Analytics says is their discretionary spending. And I did check my own record, which has been rated to see, and I'm like, well, that's probably what my discretionary spending is, but I'm not going to let my husband know that, right? Not because I'll spend it, because he'll spend it, really. And then when I'm looking at, then I'm also going to look at what Target Analytics thinks they have in terms of investment. So I'm thinking, okay, how much of a percentage of their discretionary spending would they be willing to give up for 5 years to do a major gift? And for us, major gift is defined at $25,000 and up over the course of up to 5 years. And then how much in their investments might they be willing to liquidate to do this if it's something that's really important to them? We also have some plan giving prospects in our portfolios at Georgia Southern. And so in looking at plan giving, then I'm looking at their net worth and balancing what I think they could give based on, are they married? How old are they? Do they have children or other things that they may be concerned about, and making sure they're taken care of? So if you have access to ratings, definitely take a look at them to help you set what your goals are going to be. And if you have a prospect research or a research team, get to know those people, make them your best friends. It is really important to be able to call them up and say, hey, I've got one right now who out of the blue said, I want to make a stock transfer, just told a program director that, and wasn't even in our database. We couldn't even, I couldn't figure out who the person even was. And so I went to my prospect researcher. She figured it out in a matter of minutes. Had to do a little bit of investigation because was using a middle name instead of the first name. Anyway, that's what she's there for. And so I was glad to have her to assist me with that. So in my spreadsheet that you saw earlier, and looking at their history and capacity. So I'm keeping track of what I think their very, 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 very best gift might be based on what is in those analytics and those ratings. So what is their major gift capacity? What do I think their plan giving capacity is? Even if they're assigned to me as as a major gift or a planned gift prospect. I'm really going to figure that out for myself. And I'm going to figure out, you know, based on what they may want to do and based on where they are, what stage of life, are we really talking about just a major gift, just a planned gift, or are we talking about something that might be a mixed gift and a little bit of each? I also like to keep track in the sheet of when the last touch was, whether that was an interaction with me or an interaction with someone else, just so I know if it's been a while since someone from the university was in contact with them. And then, of course, when their last gift was. That's really important to keep track of. And in fact, I just sent an email last week to our annual giving director saying, look, I've got a lot of people in my portfolio who haven't given a gift yet this year. What plans do you have for end of the year? Are you doing some sort of mail? Because we have a new annual giving director and not sure what the plans are. So I was able to sort the sheet by when the last gift date was to see who those people were who normally give gifts annually but haven't done that yet, even though I'm really focused on major gifts. I do also worry about, are they staying current with their annual gifts? And then I also want to keep in here what their existing endowments are. And the reason I do this, again, all of this is accessible to me in some way in NXT. But one, I don't know that I'm smart enough to go in and figure it out, to do the report and set it up. I could probably ask somebody to do something for me, but I'm not sure I could get all of these things in one place the way I want to see them. Doing it this way, I'm seeing them the way I want to see them, and that's the way I'm going to work best. So do what works best for you. So I started to realize as I was working with these, because I'm new in this role and with this college and with these donors, that I don't have in my head the people who already have things established. So I added the column for existing endowments. A little bit of description here. What is the endowment? How much is in it? When was it established? And then if they have a planned gift, because again, I don't have the institutional memory. It's in NXT, and so I can find it there, and I just put it in the spreadsheet for easy reference for myself. But anytime I'm working with the sheet, I'm also working with NXT. So I often have them both pulled up on the screen side by side. I do sometimes even have this sheet pulled up in two different windows side by side because it's so big. Now I have the first couple of columns frozen so that I can always see who I'm working with, no matter how far in the sheet I've scrolled over. But sometimes I want to work in two different sections at the same time, and so I have them side by side on the screen with NXT, working with it all together. Maybe it's more complicated than it needs to be, but it works for me. So just to keep up with all of those things. And then I also have an interest field, and I build this based on if they're an alum, what was their degree area, if they're a faculty or a retired staff faculty, what areas did they work in, what career fields are they are. So they've got a biology degree, but they own a company that does security systems. You know, just don't assume the only thing they're interested in is biology because they have a biology degree. What funds have they given to previously at the university, whether those were major gifts or those were annual gifts? What are they supporting already at the university? What have I found in the biography that I think might be inspiring to them or about them? Because again, I want to make it personal. So if they've been in the Air Force, I'm going to have that. You see that here. If they've shown an interest in research, I'm going to have that here. If they've given to a fund memorializing a particular person or faculty member, I'm going to have that here, because if something happens relative to that person, I want to know, oh, here are all the people that have given to the fund for Dr. McKeever, and so I can send something to them about whatever's going on. Have they given gifts that I know of, thanks to my prospect researcher, probably to other organizations? So I know they're interested in cancer research. So if something comes up that we're doing in the university that is about that kind of research, I can be sure to make sure they know about it. And then any notes that previous gift officers have made in their record that may provide information, like she grows daffodils, then I'm going to put that in there just so that I can easily find it in this sortable, searchable, accessible sheet.
Hey, Cheryl,
yes.
there's one question in the chat
Yes.
from Bob Preston. How do you keep gift info updated?
I just do it. And now some days I forget to do it, but as I'm working through the sheet, so I try at least a few times a week to go in. There's a sort of ready-made report in NXT called Last 7 Days under Giving. And so I'll pull that up, I'll scroll through it, looking for any gifts that have come in, and we'll recognize, well, one, if they're assigned to me, yay. But if it's somebody who's in my portfolio, I do that. So sometimes it's not exactly current, but it's pretty current. And I just try to do periodically go in and make sure that it's current. Last touch, I'm really bad about not always remembering to do that as I'm, sending somebody a birthday card or calling them to ask for a meeting. So again, because I always have this sheet open, pretty much I'm keeping track of, oh yeah, I just sent that, I'm going to update last touch. And I'm putting it in their record too. So in terms of the priority and plan, this was something my boss asked all of us to do. And I'm like, I've already got this massive spreadsheet. Now she wants me to create some other kind of report to give to her. And how am I going to do this? And so I figured out a way to do what she needed me to do in the sheet I already have. And so this ended up being after, you'll see the priority column, the donor name column, whatever the current solicitation goal is, and my next steps in my communication plan with that, my cultivation plan with that donor are in the next column. And these I moved over to the front of the spreadsheet so that when I gave access to my boss, she doesn't have to scroll all the way through all of those columns to try to find what she's looking for. So column number 3 is, or column C is, what is my current solicitation goal? It includes what quarter I think I'm going to ask for the gift, not when I'm going to receive it, because we all know sometimes that takes another quarter or two before the money comes in, sometimes longer. You don't usually ask for the gift and they hand you a check immediately. And then what kind of gift is it going to be? That was something that she asked for us to include. What is the target ask amount, I think, right now? And then what do I think I'm going to ask them to do? And then under next steps, these are based on what's in that four-quarter calendar of what I think is coming up. So you might see birthday card in here, as well as when I'm going to have a meeting with them, that the tasks associated with setting up that meeting and following up to that meeting are also going to be in here. And I have the date as the first thing in here. Again, remembering I'm always looking to be able to sort the sheet according to what information I'm looking for at the moment. So one of the number one ways I'm always sorting this sheet is by next steps. By having the date first, I can say, show me, everything in chronological order, and then I can see what are the things I meant to do yesterday that I didn't get done. That's going to pop right up to the top of the list. What are the things that I need to get done today are going to pop to the list. So as I complete them, so you'll see use the strategy tool here as the first item in this set of steps. I delete them. If I delete something, and I might add another step in this case, both of these are pretty full, so I don't know that I'd be adding anything anytime soon, but I would be looking at my strategic plan, which you're going to see the steps, as well as the 4-quarter plan to get through what tasks should be in these next steps coming up. And then that way I'm organizing my work. So this is a working document for me that I am consulting throughout the day, every single day, to keep track of what it is I was planning to do. In terms of their personal details, I'm going to include their Raises Edge ID, so whatever constituent ID you're using. And I include that here for easy access so that when I'm referring something to our gift acceptance people or to the prospect researcher or someone else, I have their ID right there without having to go into NXT to find it for them. Because, some names like mine, Cheryl Susevich, pretty sure I'm the only Cheryl Susevich on the entire planet, but other names not so unique. And so even in our database, we may have 5 or 6 people with that name, particularly when you start talking about people who name their sons after themselves and then their grandsons get the name, and you have multi-generation alumni families, you may have that name in there many times. Even my husband's name, there are 3 people in his family. Susevich is unique, but Edward is not unique. And so lots of people in his family have that name. I think they decided on 5 men's names, and that's all they have. Anyway, that's another story. I also include their age. You'll see here, I don't have the specific age because I'm not going to go in and update their age every time they have a birthday. And someone may be in my portfolio for a while, depending on what we're trying to accomplish with them. They may be in there for several years, so I'm not going to constantly change their age. So I just put the decade. And the reason that I have that there is because I kind of want to know and be reminded, if I am going to try to talk to someone about planned giving, or if something about their age may inform the way I'm communicating with them until I know better about what their own personal communication preferences are. You may have an 80-year-old donor who loves to text. You may have a 25 or 30-year-old donor who just loves to talk on the phone and is in love with real mail. Those things happen, but generally speaking, that's not what happens. And so this kind of gives me an idea of how I'm going to approach them and remind me, oh yeah, this person is a little bit older. I might need to keep that in mind in my communication with them. I include the class year if they are alumni. On this particular screenshot, you don't see where I will also put, if it's a foundation, I have an abbreviation for foundation, I have an abbreviation for companies, an abbreviation for retirees of the university. And then I keep the location. And you'll see here that in all of these, I have the state abbreviation followed by an area of the state. So GA Bullock County is not just going to be people in Statesboro, where our largest campus is located, but people who are adjacent to Statesboro. And the reason that I have that there is when I'm planning, I've got a donor that I want to go see in Augusta. I can easily sort here. And again, there's a way to do this in NXT. I do know how to do it, but here I can do it in the sheet where I'm already working on everything else. Sort it, find everybody who's in the Augusta area, and decide whether I want to try to make a visit to them while I'm in Augusta to see someone else. And then I have the city specific. I have email. And it looks like I did this screenshot before I had entered very many of the emails. This is one of the more recent additions. I have email, but I don't have phone number. And the reason for that is the only reason I have email in here is because I want to be able to sort through particular groups of people based on whatever characteristics in the sheet and grab a bunch of email addresses to send an email about something. So if it's people that I want to keep in touch with for the fact that they're all in the Air Force, you'll see an example of an email I did for that later. Then I can sort through that, grab their emails if they have email addresses, and get that without having to go into NXT, export it, copy it, and then do it, because it's not going to work as well that way. And I have spouse email too. This is particularly important for the case where I have a couple who are both alumni. So you'll see in one of those lines under class year 2004, 2009, that's because both of them are alumni. So I have both of their class years in there to let me know that. And then you'll see across the bottom that I have multiple sheets in this Google Sheet. One of those is prospects, which is actually what we're looking at now. Oh, that's why you actually don't see all the information in here, is because these are people who are not in my portfolio yet. So they are prospective prospects. They're people that I think may be added to my portfolio later. And of course, I do have a prospect researcher who will add things to my portfolio and suggest things, but I've also been looking at who are the Libans and Sybans at particular levels to the areas that I represent that I think I might want to take a closer look at later. Any high capacity alumni that may come to my attention. So if a faculty member recommends somebody or somebody sends me a news clipping, I'll look and see if we have ratings on them. And if they look like their ratings are pretty good, then I'll put them in this list so that when I move other people out of my portfolio, either because I don't think they're going to be able to do a gift, or they've said no, or they've said yes, then I've got this lineup ready. So most of the time when I send something to the prospect researcher to say, take Mr. and Mrs. X out of my portfolio, I also say, add Mr. and Mrs. X to my portfolio. Again, that's not something every gift officer does. It's something that I do and like to do. And I set aside a little bit of time to try to keep track of that, but I just enter their basic information to start with. And then I also keep track of people I've moved off of my portfolio. I just take their line, copy and paste it into the removed tab, and I have a column there where I put when and why they were removed, because I found that later on I'm like, wait, I thought so-and-so was in my portfolio and now they're not there anymore and I can't remember. It is in the NXT record, but this way it's in the sheet again that I'm working with all of the time. So here are the 26 steps to success. These may expand, they may get smaller as I work through them and decide, oh, I don't really need this step anymore. This is based on the 5-meeting model from Academic Impressions, which you all may be familiar with. If not, again, if you see it at a conference or you see them providing another webinar on it, you may want to check it out. So the 5-meeting model is that basically there are 5 steps. And again, it may not be exactly 5 meetings to get from beginning to the end of the cultivation process, but these are the way they outline them. So meeting number 1 is qualification, finding out about capacity and propensity, confirming that. Meeting number 2 is making the match. What do I need to know in order to align this donor with an institutional goal? Meeting number 3, confirming that match. So getting them excited about it. Are there other people I need to bring into the process? Do I need to take them to see something in order to get them excited about it? Meeting 4 is sort of working through what you think you're going to ask them for, both in terms of the project as well as the gift size, maybe even the gift format. So is this a cash gift, a stock transfer? Is it them setting up a trust or doing a bequest if you're doing plan giving? And then meeting number 5, of course, is the ask and the close, and thinking through what all you need to have and who all you need to have to be able to make that ask and get hopefully a positive response. So these steps here start off with that ratings analysis I mentioned earlier. So I'm always going to look through and see what we already think we know about what their capacity may be, setting up their 4-quarter plan, figure out what my goal is for them and when, what the timeline is going to be for them. I've also discovered I'm keeping track now of how many I think I'm going to be able to do in any particular quarter, because I'm way overly ambitious, I've discovered. And, you know, if it were up to me, I'd ask all 130 of them before the end of the year. And of course, that's not realistic. And frankly, it's not advisable. It's not really productive because you're not going to get your best gifts that way. So these are all the steps that I follow through the meeting. So after each meeting, setting back, updating their opportunity in NXT, which is how we keep track of the proposal that we're working towards with them, updating the strategy tool, and I'm going to show you that in a minute, and then getting prep for the meeting and follow up for the meeting and all of those things. So I can track these across the spreadsheet and see what I need to do next. And if for some reason somebody in their next steps column, there's nothing there, I can scroll across and find out where I last was with them so that I can schedule something for me to do. So I'm like, oh, I've done the 5-meeting plan, but I haven't done the strategy tool. So that's what I need to do next. Let me try to do that in a couple of days, and I'll put that date into their next steps column. So here's some more tools from Academic Impressions. I have modified these some for myself, and so I have them in my Google Drive in my strategy folder as resources. The 5-meeting model exercise, where you can work through what questions you're going to ask them. The donor understanding, which is going through, and this can really, I really recommend this tool from Academic Impressions because it provides you with a lot of questions. What are the things you need to know? What are the philanthropic goals of this donor? What is the time frame for this donor? What's most important to them? These can really help inform your conversations. Now, you're not going to ask all of these questions in one meeting, right? It's not an interrogation when you go to talk to a donor, but these are the things to have in your mind, and you can prioritize what are the things I really need to know going to this meeting, because it's super easy, right, to just have meeting after meeting after meeting with people. And that's the beauty of this 5-meeting model, is it gives you a real goal to move through with each of these donors so that you don't end up having unproductive conversations. And boy, it is super easy to do it when you're meeting with a donor you really enjoy, somebody you really like spending time with. Yeah, I'll come over to your house, or sure, let's go meet somewhere. Yeah, let's have some coffee or dinner or whatever, because you just love this person. Well, that's not what your job is, right? And in fact, there are some donors that I'm probably about to move out of my portfolio. My predecessor met with these people a lot. They're very enthusiastic, but I really don't think they're really going to make a major gift anytime within the next few years. But at the end, they said, "We're always good for a meal." And I thought, well, that's great, but that's not my goal, right? My goal isn't to have as many meals as possible with as many donors as possible. So as much as you may enjoy them, you've got to stay on track and stay focused. So you need to have in your mind, what are the key questions that you're going to ask? Because you're not going to pull out, here's my list of questions that I'm going to ask you now and tick off as you go down the sheet. I prefer to do it strictly as a conversation. And so I need to have in my brain before I go into the meeting, these are the 3 things I need to come out of this meeting with. This is what I need to know. And I've got to direct the conversation that way, no matter how much we may talk about other things too. And then the strategy template. And this really helps, again, putting in one place, what is their giving history? What am I trying to accomplish? Who else may I need to involve in this? And then what's my time frame? And this will help me to build out my 5-meeting plan and my calendar on the spreadsheet as well. So here's the calendar. I try to keep 5 quarters so that I'm moving forward. I've got the quarter that has just ended as well as the upcoming quarters in here. And I don't want to delete them because some of these things recur, right? So if there's somebody that I want to make sure is going to be invited to the President's Skybox this season, I'm going to want to invite them to the Football Skybox next season as well, perhaps. And so this way I can just copy and paste what's coming up in the next year, take out what I don't need, but leave what I do still need without forgetting to include somebody's birthday. For instance, it's always going to be in September if it was in September last year. And you'll see that there are things here that have strike through, and that's because I've already added them into the next steps. And so this way I know as I'm working through this, I already put in there that I want to make sure I notify them about the plant sale coming up at the Botanic Garden because they're supporters of the Botanic Garden. And we just had the most successful plant sale ever, despite the fact that it was entirely virtual. Well, the plants weren't virtual. They did get to go pick them up. And so I want to make sure also, and the reason that these are color-coded by quarter, because we track things by quarter. Your institution probably does that too. So is there at least one touch point that I'm planning each quarter? And for some people, especially if I don't really know them yet, it may be hard to come up with what am I going to do with them. And so I'm looking at what are their interests. So if this is someone who is a medical doctor and I don't know what else to do with them, well, at the end of the school year, I can send them a little email updating them on how many students we had apply to medical school this year. So I can put that in, okay, I know in April, I'm going to send them an update, or in May, I'm going to send them an update of how many students applied for medical school this year. And that's just a touch point. And it also gives me the opportunity then to also say, hey, would love to meet with you while I'm in Atlanta next month. Would you be available? What else have I got on here? That's everything. All right. So this is really critical. Do not forget to do your contact reports, and do not forget to do them quickly. So as I said, I'm often in my car doing contact reports, and I may not be doing the actual entry into Raiser's Edge, but I have an app on my phone that I use where I can speak the message into there. So I don't forget the details, right? Because I've just sat through a meeting. You may take notes in meetings. I tend not to take notes in meetings until we get to the end of the process, and I want to make sure that I'm being very accurate about what the donor's saying, about what their intentions are. But in the beginning, I never write a note down. I'm keeping it all in my brain. And so when I get out of the meeting, I've got to immediately dump it into the meeting. And this is really important when planning visits, particularly when you're on the road, that I give myself the time to do that. And so that's why parking lots are my best friend. And I will sit there and at least speak into so that I can go back and with that app, I'm able to just copy and paste my notes into the Raiser's Edge NXT. But this is really critical because if you don't have good notes, when you get a new donor and you inherit them from gift officers who've worked with them before and you have no idea what their conversations have been about, that can be really harmful to the relationship. My experience working with alumni, for instance, when I was an alumni director, was they expected me to know not only every interaction that they were currently having with the university. If they talked to one person at the university, they just thought all of us knew it, right? They also expected to remember every professor they ever had. You're like, you remember Dr. So-and-so? I'm like, yeah, he died before I was born, but sure, he was great. So they just expect if somebody at the university knows it, all of us know it. Well, the only way we can do that is to make sure that we have really good contact reports. So whatever system your office uses for tracking it, really important to do it, really important to include details, and really important to do it before you forget anything. So do it immediately, do it by the end of the day. For goodness sake, at least do it by the end of the week. And sometimes when you're busy, it's really hard to do. So if you can't get into the system to do it, keep notes somewhere so that you can reference it when you actually enter them in to the system. The way that we structure ours is we have a short statement about what we did. So what was the essence of this? Person agreed to fund X and X, or person is interested in supporting the Botanic Garden. And then what we have is what we will do next. And so for me, I often actually write next at the top of the note. Next, this is what I'm doing with this person. And then what did I learn? And that's where I put all of the information from the conversation or the interaction with the donor. If you're using NXT, Google, Gmail, if you're using NXT and Gmail, there's an app you can download from Blackbaud where you can actually just click on the email and click on the app, and it will give you the opportunity to just add that email directly into as an action. So love that app. I think it's called Blackbaud for Gmail. Can't remember, but you can certainly find it in their marketplace. So what did I learn? And again, even in that text, the beginning of that is going to be everything relevant to the gift that I'm trying to develop. And then any extra information I picked up about the daughter is engaged and going to be getting married in next year. Why am I including that? Well, because that could have an impact on what their gift giving is going to be. If I'm about to pay for a $50,000 or $100,000 wedding, I'm probably maybe not going to also be making a $50,000 gift to the university in this next year. But additional information too, which is really important as the relationship with the university goes on, because remember, especially if you're talking about alumni, the relationship with the university is going to outlast you. It started before you probably, and it's going to last beyond you because it is a lifelong relationship. And so as they get older, you may need to know what were the names of their children. We need to have that in their record, and you need to make sure that it's added in their record as a relationship. What are the places where they lived and grew up? Whatever biography you can catch, because you've got to personalize the relationship. And you may know it, but the person who comes in to work with that person next may not have that. And so it's so much easier for them if they can get that from your notes and put it in their brains. They may still let the donor tell them. I know a lot about a donor that they tell me again. And some people do it every time you meet them. That's just how some of us are. So it's really important that you keep your contact reports updated, make them complete. If the only thing your contact report says, had coffee with donor at Starbucks, that doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help you when you go back 3 months later to try to remember what you talked about. And it certainly doesn't help anybody who succeeds you if you get hit by a bus tomorrow. So I'm always operating on I might get hit by a bus or a plane might crash into me today. What's going to happen with my donors if that happens? So try to keep your information updated. Operational practices. So I do try to calendar 1 hour a day for strategy and working through those next steps on my sheet, and I go back to it throughout the day. But for at least one day, I'm making sure that I'm keeping my strategy up to date. I work through it daily. So one day I work on the people who are in my top 10. So those 10 not most important, but most urgent donors in the portfolio. One day did the next 25. I split up the rest of my portfolio between 2 days. And I don't do the top 10 on Mondays because Mondays are days you're often out of office. Fridays you're often out of office. So I actually do it right now on Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember. And then I have one day left for those potential people, those people who aren't in my portfolio that I want to keep up with, so that I make sure that I'm tracking through. And if I'm behind on the people who are in my portfolio, then I don't do potentials or honorees. You can't be stuck in a system. It has to be flexible and responsive. And then I keep track of standard tasks for meetings, how I'm going to set it up. I'm rushing because I can't remember how many slides I have left. And then once the gift is closed, what are the standard tasks I'm going to add into those next steps to make sure the faculty know that the gift came in, that the donor gets a thank you, not just from the system, but from me, from the department head or whoever else may also need to acknowledge it, send any other information they may need, et cetera, et cetera. And then for my travel days, I have found that I will mark the whole day for that region. And then as I contact the people, add that into the event description for myself. If they're booked, so here, I've set up Barkley for 10 a.m., but for Price, I sent him an email on 9/24. I'm waiting to hear back from him. So I still need to follow up on that. Oh, good. I'm pretty much done. So in conclusion, I really think you've got to have big picture thinking, right? You've got to know what the goal is. You got to know what you're trying to achieve, but then you also need to focus on these details. And so I mentioned an email that I sent to all of my Air Force people in my portfolio on the Air Force birthday. I just did this, and this is something you can easily do. You don't have to be a designer. I used a site online called Pixlr, Pixlr, that you can access for free, and you can go in, just add aspects and things to a photo, try to make sure you've got something that's not owned by somebody when you use it. And then I was able to just send this with a greeting to all of them saying, thank you for your service. And, for those of them that I was trying to advance a relationship right now, then it also had a note saying, I'm really hoping to be able to talk to you. Can we schedule some time on Zoom? And a lot of them responded to that. I sent one out I have a lot of folks who work at NASA or who are retired from NASA in my portfolio. So on the anniversary of the moon landing, I sent them all something, and they respond because it's personal. It's about their lives, and they realize that I understand what's important to them, and that helps to build the relationship. So in real conclusion, one more thing from Arthur Chrysalis of Alexander Haas. Again, I highly recommend his presentation, The Art of the Ask. Get to it, see it wherever you can if you haven't seen it before. He really emphasized, do you still like the idea of that? So I just wanted to say, if you get no from a donor, it doesn't necessarily mean no, never. It can mean not now. It can mean not exactly this project, not this amount. So don't just get disappointed. You need to work through the relationship and figure out what needs to happen to make this happen. And so one of the things he recommends is saying, do you still like the idea that students would be able to graduate debt-free? Do you still like the idea that students would have better access to be able to afford to take time off from working to do an internship? That's the kind of thing that he works through. So thank you all for joining me this afternoon. I don't know if there are any other questions. We have just a few minutes left on the clock.
Getting a lot of presentations. I'm not sure how to get out of this screen. Well, thank you all so much. I wish you great success